thank you guys for coming. My name's Anessa, and I'm going to do a quick down and dirty demonstration, quick conversation about router bit and saw blade cleaning and maintenance, which are actually two completely different tasks, but they can be done in conjunction with each other or separately, although cleaning it first is often the best way to get it nice and sharp. So the first thing we're going to talk about is why we need to do it. So if you look at amazing Freud blade here, you can see not just along the carbide, but even on the steel, it's just a lot of pitch and gum and black gunk, okay? And the reason that you want to get that off is that when you leave this on, it overheats the carbide. As this stuff stays on there, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, which reduces the life of the carbide. So it will dull faster and it will cut poorly when you leave that on there. So that's why you do it with both router bits. And you can see this solid carbide bit here has not been taken care of. I don't know how good you can see. You can always come up and look. So I'm going to try to clean that today. We'll see how that goes. I also have some, more standard flat style rabbiting bit there and a dovetail bit. These are pretty dull. I can squeeze. Not even putting a dent in my finger. So that's why we do it, because the pitch and the gum and the resin makes it a bad blade. And you can actually improve your cutting capacity with a simple cleaning. It will actually cut better. Next thing you're going to want to do is figure out what type of cleaner you want. There's some expensive ones on the market. You'll see some people talking about oven cleaner and some really abrasive chemicals. You don't need to do that. This stuff right here, I actually looked up the MSDS on the main chemical in there. Butoxyethanol, too. So it's got a whole bunch of carbon, hydrogen, and it's just an organic chemical. It is considered to be non-toxic, although the MSDS did say, yeah, exactly. So compared to like an oven cleaner or something like that. The other things that we have for pitching, as well as, I actually tried some of this Totally Awesome As Seen on TV cleaner. It worked pretty well too. So Simple Green is another one that people use. This is fine. You don't have to have toxic chemicals to clean off that pitch and gum and resin. And if you do a lot of cutting with pine, you're going to have to do that more often, because those are the woods that have the most of that resin in them. You want to get some kind of tray. This is the wood. If you use this and you go to pick it up, you got your blade in there, it all spills out. So keep the box and set it on the box. If you don't want to pay for one of these guys, although they are on sale today, Home Depot lid, 5-gallon lid on the, on those buckets you buy, those will work too. So all you're going to do, you don't have to put on gloves, but what the heck, may as well. I have them here. Take your blade. It's even got a little gadget to hold the arbor. Don't know why that's important, but they have it in there. I guess I can push. And you don't need to use a whole lot. I've watched a lot of videos where people were pouring gallons of this stuff into buckets and you're wasting material. And then they're like, well, then I pour it back into my container. All right, don't do that, So you're just going to spray it down on the resin. I like to use a nylon brush because I don't want to trash the coating on the blade, right? Those metal brushes can take that Teflon coating off. So nylon's good. Toothbrush will work if you need to cut it so it's a little bit more, it's a little tighter. You can do that. So put it on, then you just flip it over. You're going to get both sides. Let that soak in there. And you can just leave it sitting, which we'll do for a minute. Just let it sit, 5-10 minutes, something like that. Same thing with router bits. I'll grab this guy and let that stay in there. I really do want to clean that one. Next step, after we've waited, brush. If it's not coming off with the nylon brush, you probably just need to add more cleaner. You don't want a harder brush. The cleaner should be doing the work less than the brush is doing the work. So I'm going to flip it back over. My first one. And if you come up, you can already see inside here, it's filthy. Like it's just coming right off. There. Just going to go around. try to get most of that off. And I'm starting to see metal. This retails for $13.19, so that's not bad.
How about odor?
It's an orange, so I don't really smell anything at all. Let that sit. Come on back around again on this side. And it does splash a little bit, so wearing glasses or goggles is a good idea. I saw a guy from This Old House, one of my favorite shows. He not only uses that same formula there, and he uses the Home Depot lid and a cut-off toothbrush, but he uses sawdust when he's done to polish the carbide and the metal. His come out really shiny. And believe it or not, that extra step isn't just aesthetic. When the wood's polished, or when the carbide is polished, it cuts better. It's the same thing with hand planes and chisels and stuff like that, carving tools. That extra bit of polish on there just reduces friction. So wow, this is looking really good. You can see here I've got a lot of gunk in there. I think I've abused this blade. All right, for purposes of our demo. Now something to think about, if you have a saw stop, make sure you before you put it back in there and spin that blade so you don't set off the brake. But you can see I'm getting a little bit of the Teflon. You can see the red. That's why I don't want to brush it too much. But I'm also getting a lot of that pitch off of there. And it's mostly in here now. Same thing with the router bit. If you want to brush each individual, so the flat part of the carbide here is the most important part, even though I'm sort of getting the gullets and everything like that. So right in there, you just want to make sure you're kind of giving that a brush. 40 teeth isn't bad, but when you get up into 60 and 80, this can get old. But it really does increase the life of the blade. So you go around and do that. Let it dry off. You can always do another one, but you can see here I've gotten almost all that stuff off. Let's see how the router bit comes out. So that guy was pitch black on the top. And it's a little bit cleaner. Not perfect. It probably needs to be sharpened at this point. So that one we let get too dull before we cleaned it off. And that's the downside of cleaning, is that it requires you to do it more often for it to be effective. All right, any questions on the cleaning side? Like I said, this worked. I used this to clean that 40-tooth saw stop blade. It's just a household cleaner as seen on TV. Anything that's solvent-based is going to work. And then you can always, once it dries, add a lubricant to the carbide. That will also help. This is a blade coat product. All right, so that's the cleaning side. Now let's talk about the sharpening side. So the main consideration when it comes to carbide is what material do you want to use. Traditionally, diamond stones are used to sharpen carbide because carbide is so strong and brittle and hard compared to high-speed steel or even any kind of tungsten carbide, which you can use water and oil stones and do that by hand. The carbide will do get much sharper with diamond stones. And when it comes to saw blades, you don't want to go any higher than 600 grit. If you get up around past 1,000, the metal gets so thin that it's brittle and it'll actually just curl up and stop working. So 600 grit is the highest that you want to go. And has come up with these carbide stones. This guy here, really simple, easy to use. It's got a 300 side and a 600 side, and you just take your router bit, flat side, you only sharpen the flat part, and then you're just going to go back and forth, making sure you keep it dead flat. That's important. Otherwise, you change the profile. This will only work if you're doing it all the time, because if I let this thing get too dull, like most of these are, there's a very good chance that as I run this carbide across that diamond, I'm going to start to move it back and forth left or right. It's just hard to keep it at dead flat. So you want to do this every time you use the bit if you want to sharpen it yourself. If you're not going to do this every time, send it out to be sharpened by somebody with a really good jig. Now, we have the sharpening service here. His name is Stu. He does a fantastic job. He sharpens my router bits. So a diamond stone is key, trend, but he came up with this whole packet here. This is the trend accessory packet. And he has a whole bunch of, he likes to talk a lot and he writes a lot. But explaining why the diamond is the best. It's a whole kit. It's got some lapping fluid on it, which is also important. This is petroleum based, but it won't rust the nickel in your diamond stones. Water will, and it will get down in there as much as you try to wipe the water off. These are basically nickel based, and it will rust if you use water as your lapping fluid. So use something that is not going to rust the metal if you're going to use diamond stones. So he puts some of that in there. He's got the rubber eraser for cleaning sandpaper. He's got a 300 and a 600 diamond card, a file, and a DVD. So it's a nice little set. I think it's on the pricey side, but if I was going to do my own sharpening, I'd get it because it'll pay off. I've also seen jigs where they'll buy an angle grinder, if you can picture it, strap it down, a 400 grit diamond stone they put on it, and then you figure out a way to push the carbide against the stone or the grinding wheel as it's turning. I saw some really cool ones on YouTube. They're not hard to make with some plywood and just a little ingenuity. You get that grinding stone going, and then all you do is sharpen the flat side on each one, and you've got practically a brand new blade. So it's a lot of time to set up, and you can look at plans online on how people make those. Another jig I've seen is to take a 400 grit diamond stone and put it in your table saw. And then the same thing, you just set up a nice jig where you are gently pushing the flat part of the carbide up against the spinning 400 grit diamond blade, and it just makes it really nice. You can almost do it by eye because you can see where it's so flat. So it's really easy to do. But again, if you're not doing it often, I'd recommend just sending it out. You don't want to be there for an hour on a blade because you're more likely to change the shape of the carbide than you are to sharpen it. So that's why if you're not doing it often, just send it out. The other reason why the trend guy says his diamonds are better, and I'll kind of finish up with this, he uses monocrystalline diamonds. So are more likely to stay sharp longer as opposed to polycrystalline diamonds, which start off really sharp, but similar to aluminum oxide sandpaper, which also start off really sharp, as soon as you start knocking it down, it's done. So what happens is just like with 120 grit aluminum oxide sandpaper, after you've used it for a while, it doesn't become 240, it becomes useless, right? And it's the same thing with cheap diamond stones. So make sure that you're getting a monocrystalline diamond stone. The trend does that. DMT, you can usually tell by the price. So this is 3 diamonds for $10. So these are probably polycrystalline, right? You can buy more of them. This can be set up on a piece of wood at an angle, and again, you can just sort of run your saw blade through it while it's in the machine. You can actually just slide it back and forth while it's in the saw correctly. But if you use inexpensive diamond blades, they dull quickly, and then you begin to waste your time when they've passed their point of uselessness. But if you're still doing it, they're not getting sharp, and you are, wasting your time. Any other questions?